All right, so let's jump right into this, the world of
Yes.
Indian hospitality. You
Yeah.
sent over some
Right.
pretty interesting financial documents, actually, from Oriental Hotels Ltd.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I'm hooked.
Really?
I mean, we've got standalone and consolidated financials for the quarter ending December 31st, 2024.
Wow.
We've got review reports from their auditors.
Okay.
So today, we're not just crunching numbers.
Right.
We're going to really get a feel for how this company operates
Yeah.
within the larger Indian hospitality scene.
Well, you know what's fascinating about this is that India's tourism and hospitality sector is really on track to grow a lot in the next few years.
Okay, Ted.
So these financials are really interesting. They're not just numbers on a page. They're
Right.
really kind of a glimpse into,
Yeah.
a company that could be riding this wave of growth.
That's cool. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, the documents show that the board of directors had a quick meeting on January 15th, 2025.
Interesting.
It was under an hour,
Wow.
but they covered some important ground.
I bet.
Um,
Yeah, the timing is key here
Yeah.
because this meeting was right after the quarter closed.
yeah.
So it gives the board a chance to review those numbers and sign off on the financial performance.
So they wasted no time approving the unaudited financial results for the quarter.
Yeah, it looks like they're all about efficiency.
But let's talk about something that really caught my eye.
Okay.
It was the recommendation of Mr. Ramesh Julatram Haryani
Right.
as a new director.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So Mr. Haryani, he's not a new face.
Right.
He actually served on the board for almost 20 years
What
before retiring in October 2024.
Seriously, 20 years.
It is kind of a comeback story.
That's a serious tenure.
Yeah.
I mean, he must know the company inside and out.
He knows the company inside and out for sure.
Makes you wonder why bring back someone from the old guard?
I know it's a good question.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he brings a wealth of experience.
Sure.
He knows the company inside and out.
Right.
But on the other hand, it could make you question,
What?
if they're open to fresh perspectives and new ideas.
Makes sense.
It's a delicate balance
Yeah.
between valuing experience and embracing innovation.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yes.
Now, let's get down to the heart of these documents.
Okay.
The financial statements.
Right.
We've got standalone and consolidated reports.
Right.
So that gives us two different lenses to look at the company's performance.
Exactly. The standalone statements zoom in on Oriental Hotels Ltd itself,
Okay.
but the consolidated view includes the performance of its subsidiary,
Okay.
its joint venture, and its associates.
Okay.
So we can see how those investments fit into the bigger picture.
Okay. Let's start with the standalone statement.
All right.
Revenue from operations for the quarter
Uh-huh.
was 12,135 lakhs.
Okay.
That's pretty impressive. But then you look at other income, and it's a tiny 70 lakhs.
Huh.
Why such a huge gap?
Well, this is a great example of how one line item
Well,
can really reveal a company's strategy and risk appetite.
Okay.
So this other income, being so small, tells us that they're laser focused on their main source of revenue, hotel operations.
Okay.
They're not relying on other things like
Right.
investments or asset sales,
Yeah.
which might be a sign of a more conservative approach
Yeah.
compared to some other players in the industry.
So they're all about running a tight ship,
Looks like it.
focused on filling rooms, and providing a top-notch experience for their guests.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, this is what we do, and we do it well.
Exactly.
Now let's switch lenses
Okay.
and look at the consolidated statement.
All right.
Total revenue for the quarter
Yeah.
comes in a little higher at 12,257 lakhs.
Okay.
So it seems like their investments are playing a role in boosting revenue,
Right.
even if it's not a massive difference.
Sorry.
All right, so we've established they have a strong revenue picture.
Yes.
But now let's talk about the bottom line.
Okay.
Profit.
Profit.
That's ultimately what investors care about.
Exactly. Revenue is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
We need to see how much money they actually keep after paying all their expenses.
The standalone statement shows a profit for the period of 1,399 lakhs.
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah. But let's compare that to the consolidated statement.
Yeah.
There we see a profit of 1,544 lakhs.
That's a difference of about 145 lakhs.
Wow.
So their investments
Wrong.
in subsidiaries, associates, and joint ventures are definitely helping their bottom line.
It's not just adding to revenue.
Yeah.
It's actually boosting that bottom line.
It's a key takeaway here.
Absolutely.
By looking at both statements, we see that Oriental Hotels is generating a healthy profit
Yeah.
from its core business, And they're strategically using their investments to really bump up that profitability. Yeah. Now let's zoom in on a metric that I know investors love.
Okay.
Earnings per share.
Right.
This tells us how much profit each share of the company earned during the quarter.
Yeah, it breaks down the profit to the individual shareholder level.
Now, the standalone statement shows basic and diluted earnings per share for the quarter at 0.78 lakhs.
Okay. But, but before we jump to the consolidated numbers, can we just quickly clarify the difference between basic and diluted?
Yes, please.
Because some of our listeners might not be familiar.
Absolutely.
So basic earnings per share is simple.
Okay.
It's the net earnings divided by the average number of outstanding shares.
Okay.
But diluted earnings per share takes into account the potential dilution from things like stock options or convertible securities.
Okay.
So it's a more conservative view,
Got it.
assuming that all those potential shares are converted.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
So back to the consolidated statement. What's the diluted earnings per share there?
It's a little bit higher at 0.86 lakhs.
Okay.
So again, this difference shows how those investments are adding real value for shareholders.
Okay.
It's not just boosting the overall profit number.
All right, so their investments are playing a key role in driving both profitability and earnings per share.
Absolutely.
But we can't forget about the gatekeepers of financial reporting.
Yeah, the auditors.
The auditors.
Right.
The documents include review reports from PKF, Sridhar, and Santhanam, LLP.
Right.
And it looks like they've given these financial statements a thorough review.
Absolutely. And their opinion matters a lot to investors.
Yeah.
These review reports give us an independent assessment, so they add a layer of trust and transparency to the financial information.
So did they find anything fishy?
Well, they stated that they didn't find any material misstatements in the statements.
Okay, so that's a big green flag.
It is.
For anyone looking at Oriental Hotels as a potential investment.
It means that we can be pretty confident that these numbers we're seeing are accurate and reliable.
Okay, that's definitely reassuring.
Yeah.
But before we move on, can you quickly explain the difference between a review and a full audit?
You got it.
Yeah.
So think of a review like a checkup.
Okay.
And an audit, like a full medical exam.
Okay.
A review involves inquiries with company management and some analytical procedures.
Got it.
But a full audit is much more comprehensive and rigorous.
Makes sense.
It really digs deep into the company's financial records and transactions.
Okay, so a review gives us a snapshot of their financial health.
It does.
But a full audit would be even more reassuring.
Exactly.
Now, there's one more thing
I
want to point out about the auditor's review.
Right.
They specifically mentioned that they didn't review the interim financial information of the subsidiary. It's outside of India.
Right. So they relied on a separate review report from another auditor who looked at the subsidiary's information.
Got it.
This really highlights the complexity of auditing companies that have operations in different countries.
Right.
You need to coordinate and collaborate between different audit teams.
It makes you wonder how investors can really know what's going on.
Yeah, it's a great point.
When there's so many different people involved.
It really underscores the importance of due diligence when you're investing in companies with international operations.
Okay, so we've covered the board meeting.
Yes.
We dove into the standalone and consolidated financials.
Right.
And we even talked about the auditor's review reports.
We did.
That was a lot.
It was a lot of information.
What's your overall take on Oriental Hotels so far?
Well, at first glance, they seem to be in a pretty good position.
Okay.
You know, they have strong revenue, healthy profits, respectable earnings per share, and the auditors gave them a clean bill of health.
Oh.
But as with any investment, there's always more to the story.
Okay. You've definitely piqued my interest.
Good.
What else should we be looking at?
Well, we should look more closely at the other comprehensive income.
Okay.
Remember, that includes things like changes in the fair value of equity instruments, which can really be volatile depending on market conditions.
Okay.
So we need to understand how these changes might impact their long-term performance.
So other comprehensive income is kind of like a window into potential future gains or losses.
Yeah.
But it's a hazy crystal ball.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It can offer some insights.
Right.
But it's very uncertain.
Okay.
We should also consider Mr. Haryani coming back to the board.
Right.
Will his experience help them, or will it stifle innovation?
Right.
And let's not forget about the external factors, too.
Yeah.
The global economy, competition, and consumer preferences.
Yeah.
those could all impact Oriental Hotels.
Those could all sunshine and roses.
Not necessarily.
There are some potential challenges ahead?
Every business faces challenges.
Right.
But so far, it looks like they're navigating things pretty effectively.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've set the stage.
Yes.
Explored their financials.
Yeah.
And highlighted some key questions.
Absolutely.
When we come back,
okay,
we'll really delve deep into these statements.
Will we?
We'll look at key ratios,
okay,
trends over time, and compare their performance to industry benchmarks.
Wonderful.
Stay tuned.
I will. Welcome back.
Okay, so...
now that we've kind of laid the groundwork,
yeah,
let's roll up our sleeves and dive deeper into these financials.
All right, what financial gems are we unearthing today?
Well, let's talk about profitability.
Okay.
But from a slightly different angle. We already talked about profit for the period.
Right.
But there's another interesting metric in these documents.
Okay.
It's called EBITDA.
Ah, yes, EBITDA.
You know it.
For those who aren't financial whizzes,
right,
can you break down why this is such an important metric?
Sure. EBITDA basically gives us a clearer view of a company's operating performance.
Okay.
It strips away things like interest on debt, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Okay.
Those things can sometimes make it hard to see how efficiently a company is really running its core business.
So it's like we're looking under the hood
exactly,
and seeing the raw power of the engine before we even think about like the weight of the car or the wind resistance.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
So let's look at Oriental Hotels engine.
Right.
The standalone statement shows an EBITDA of 3,231 lakhs for the quarter.
Okay, sounds promising.
Yeah.
What about consolidated?
Consolidated EBITDA is 3,367 lakhs.
Okay.
So a little bit higher.
All right, so their investments are doing good things.
It seems so.
As far as cash flow.
Yeah, even if the difference isn't huge.
This really shows why it's important to look at.
It does.
Both standalone and consolidated statements.
Yes.
It's like we're getting a 360-degree view of their financial health.
Yeah, it's like we have two lenses.
Right.
The standalone lens focuses on the core business, and the consolidated lens widens it out to include those investments.
Yeah. Together, they paint a much clearer picture.
They do.
Of Oriental Hotels.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, remember that other comprehensive income we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah. The one with the changes in fair value of equity instruments.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how those ups and downs might impact their long-term performance.
Other comprehensive income, or OCI, is a bit of a wild card.
Okay.
It captures gains and losses that haven't actually happened yet, meaning they haven't been turned into cash yet. Changes in fair value of equity instruments are a perfect example of this.
So let's say they own shares in another company.
Yeah.
If the value of those shares goes up, that gain would show up in OCI.
Exactly.
But it's not actual cash until they sell those shares.
You got it. It's like when you have a stock portfolio that's doing well, but you haven't sold anything yet.
Right.
You're happy, but it's all on paper.
It's not real until you sell.
Exactly.
Same with losses then.
Right. If those shares drop in value, that'll be a loss in OCI.
Okay.
But it's not a realized loss.
Makes sense.
Until they actually sell.
So OCI can be really up and down.
It can.
Especially in a market that's fluctuating.
Especially in a volatile market.
Right. It's like a sneak peek into the future.
It is.
But with a cloudy crystal ball.
I love that analogy.
Right.
OCI gives us a glimpse of what might happen.
Right.
But there's a lot of uncertainty.
So it's something to keep an eye on, but not necessarily panic about.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned risks earlier.
Right.
What are some of the risks that stand out to you?
Well, one thing that jumps out is their exposure to changes in currency exchange rates.
Okay.
Their subsidiary and associate are both outside India.
Right.
So they're dealing with different currencies.
Makes sense.
So if the Indian rupee weakens against those other currencies, it could really impact the value of their investments.
That's a real worry for any company.
It is.
That's doing business globally.
Yeah, currency exchange risk is a big deal.
What other risks should we keep in mind?
Competition.
Of course.
The Indian hotel market is getting really crowded.
Right.
There are a lot of companies fighting for market share.
So what do they need to do to stay competitive?
They need to stand out and stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
Focus on innovation, customer experience, and pricing strategy.
Right, in the hospitality industry.
Yes.
Customer experience is everything.
Right.
If the service is bad or the amenities are outdated, they'll lose business.
They've got to stay on top of things.
It's a constant race to impress guests.
Okay, now let's go back to those auditor review reports.
Yeah.
You said they gave a clean opinion.
Yes, that's a good sign.
But not a guarantee.
Right.
So what are the limitations of a review?
Okay, so remember that analogy.
Yeah, the checkup.
Right, checkup versus full medical exam.
Right.
A review is like a quick check to see if everything seems okay.
Okay.
An audit is much more detailed.
Right, so a review is like a spot check.
Yeah.
And a full audit is more thorough.
Exactly.
And remember, the auditors said they didn't actually review the subsidiary's financials.
Right, because it's outside of India.
Right.
They relied on another auditor's review.
Right. So we're relying on multiple people to do their job properly.
Yeah, and this shows how important it is for investors to really look closely at the audit procedures.
And make sure all the auditors involved are qualified.
Makes sense.
Especially for companies that work internationally.
Okay, so we've talked about profitability, OCI, and even the audit process.
We've covered a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
What's the main takeaway for our listeners so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we need to look at the whole picture when we evaluate a company's financials.
Right.
We need to look at standalone and consolidated statements.
Okay.
Understand all these different metrics, really think about the risks.
Right. It's about putting the pieces together to get the full story.
Like a puzzle.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like being a financial detective.
Exactly.
Looking for clues.
Yes.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. What's up next? All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Oriental Hotels Ltd.
Right.
We've crunched the numbers. We've talked about the risks.
We have.
Now it's time to kind of step back and think about what all of this tells us about their place in the Indian hospitality industry.
It's all about context.
Yeah.
Let's connect these financials to their strategy and how they're positioned in this growing market.
Well, we saw that their revenue from operations is really strong.
Yeah.
Which means they're doing a good job.
Right.
Filling those hotel rooms.
They are.
But it's not just about having a nice property.
No.
It's about creating an experience.
It is.
That people really want to be a part of.
And remember, the Indian tourism and hospitality sector is on track to keep growing.
Right.
So Oriental Hotels is in a great spot.
Yeah, they're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. But they can't just sit back and relax.
So what do they need to do?
Well, they need to think carefully
about
how they navigate this market.
They brought back Mr. Haryani to the board.
Yeah.
So maybe they're looking for his experience.
They could be.
To help them during this time of growth and change.
Yeah, it's about finding a balance between experience and innovation.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Mr. Haryani has a lot of knowledge.
He does.
But will they still be open to new ideas?
That's the question.
Only time will tell.
Exactly.
Let's talk about competition.
Of course.
We know the market is getting more competitive.
It is.
So what do these financials tell us about how Oriental Hotels is dealing with that?
They seem really focused on running their hotels well.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, we're not going to try to do everything. We're going to focus on what we're good at.
Right. Providing that great hospitality.
Exactly.
And they're investing in subsidiaries and joint ventures.
Right.
So it seems like they have a plan.
They do.
For how they want to expand.
They're not just adding more hotels.
Right.
They're looking for opportunities that make sense.
It's like you're building a network of different experiences for travelers.
Yeah, but they're keeping that focus on quality.
It's like a tapestry.
I love that.
Where each thread is carefully chosen.
That's what makes them special.
Yeah.
They're not just a bunch of buildings.
Right, they're creating memories for their guests.
That's hard to copy.
It's what sets them apart.
Absolutely.
But let's be real.
Okay.
There are always challenges. What might they face in the future?
Well, the global economy could always have an impact.
Of course, if the economy slows down, people might travel less.
And travelers are always changing.
Yeah. What might they need to adapt to?
Well, sustainability is becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
Travelers care about the environment.
Okay.
So hotels need to show that they're doing their part.
Makes sense.
And technology is changing everything.
Right.
They need to keep up with that.
Okay.
To improve the experience for their guests.
So it's about finding that balance again.
It is.
Between keeping their traditions and embracing the future.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
But I think they can handle it.
Yeah.
These financial statements show that they have a strong foundation. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're strategic about growth.
So what's the final takeaway for our listeners?
Oriental Hotels seems to be a company on the rise.
Okay.
They're taking advantage of a growing market.
Right.
They're playing to their strengths,
Yeah.
and they're navigating a tough environment.
It sounds like they're a company worth keeping an eye on.
I think so.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
It does.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey
Yes.
into the world of Indian hospitality
It's a fascinating world.
and financial analysis.
Absolutely.
We've just scratched the surface.
Yeah, but hopefully we've sparked your curiosity.
Absolutely.
The world of finance is full of interesting stories.
Yeah.
Keep exploring.
Right.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah.
And you'll be amazed by what you find.
Until next time.
Yes.
Happy investing.
Happy investing.